The chamber stretched beyond what human eyes could properly measure. Its walls composed of light that shifted between colors no earthborn language had names for. And at its center stood Ambassador Chen Wei, representing all of humanity before the Galactic Council of Lords. The Lords themselves were beings of such age and power that some had witnessed stars being born, their forms varying from crystalline entities that hummed with mathematical precision to vast clouds of sentient gas that communicated through scent and pressure, and together they had governed the known galaxy for longer than human civilization had existed. Chun stood alone on the platform, designated for the accused, her blue diplomatic uniform seeming almost laughably simple compared to the exotic materials and energy fields that comprised the clothing and bodies of the other species present, and she held a data tablet containing humanity's defense. Though she already knew it would not matter, the charges had been read 3 cycles ago. Humanity was too aggressive, too quick to violence, too resistant to the established order that had brought peace to thousands of worlds. And the evidence presented included border disputes with the Fenari Trade Confederacy, the incident at Proxima Station where human security forces had used lethal force against what they claimed were pirates, and dozens of smaller infractions that painted humans as dangerous primitives. The Council recognizes the accused, intoned Lord Vaxterium, a being whose voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, whose form shifted between solid and liquid states as it spoke, and whose species had been starfaring when Earth was still covered in primordial oceans. Chun bowed slightly, a gesture of respect she barely felt anymore after watching this tribunal ignore every piece of evidence she had presented, every testimony from human allies, every plea for understanding. Honored lords, she began, her voice amplified by technology she did not understand to reach every corner of the impossible chamber. Humanity acknowledges that we are young, that we have made mistakes, that our methods sometimes clash with established galactic norms. But we are learning and we are changing, and we deserve the chance to grow alongside you rather than be cast out. Lord Vaxterium's form stabilized into something almost solid. A gesture that Chen had learned meant the being was about to deliver something important. And she braced herself. The council has deliberated, it said. And the chamber fell into a silence so complete that Chen could hear her own heartbeat. And we find that humanity represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Your species has demonstrated an unwillingness to follow established protocols, a tendency toward violence that exceeds normal defensive parameters, and a cultural aggression that threatens the harmony we have cultivated for millennia. Chen felt her stomach drop but kept her expression neutral, years of diplomatic training preventing her from showing the despair that threatened to overwhelm her. Therefore, Lord Vaxterium continued, the Council has voted to invoke the exclusion protocol, effective immediately. All human-controlled space, including Earth and its colonies, will be isolated beyond the barrier. You will have no contact with the galactic community, no trade, no communication, no travel across the designated boundary. You cannot do this, Chen said, her voice cracking slightly despite her best efforts. You are condemning billions of people for the actions of a few. There are human children who have never known anything but peace. There are colonies that exist solely for scientific research. You are punishing an entire species. The decision is final, said Lady Corsentiment, a crystalline being whose facets reflected light in patterns that conveyed emotion in her species. And Chen could see something that might have been pity in those reflections. The barrier will be erected within 1 standard cycle. All human vessels outside the designated zone will be given safe passage to return after that. Any attempt to cross the barrier will be met with immediate neutralization. Chen looked around the chamber at the hundreds of species represented, seeing in their alien faces and forms a unanimous agreement that chilled her more than the verdict itself. Not one species had voted against humanity's banishment. Not one voice had been raised in their defense. How long? She asked quietly, how long will this exclusion last? Lord Vaxterium's form rippled in what might have been the equivalent of a shrug. Until such time as humanity demonstrates it has evolved beyond its violent nature, or until the heat death of the universe. Whichever comes first. Bitter laughter escaped Chen's lips before she could stop it. You mean never? You mean you are erasing us from the galaxy? in pretending it is for our own good? At least have the courage to admit what you are really doing. We are protecting the galaxy from chaos, said Lord Vaxter. We are ensuring the safety and prosperity of thousands of species who have lived in harmony. We are making the difficult choice that will preserve the peace. Chen felt something shift inside her. The despair giving way to something harder and colder. I want you all to remember this moment, she said, her voice suddenly strong and clear. I want you to remember that you had a choice. You could have worked with us, taught us, helped us become better, but instead you chose fear. You chose to isolate us because we made you uncomfortable. She stepped forward to the edge of her platform, her eyes sweeping across the assembled lords. My species has a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. You are about to teach humanity the most important lesson we have ever learned. You are teaching us that we cannot rely on anyone but ourselves, that the galaxy sees us as a problem to be hidden away rather than a people to be embraced. Your theatrics change nothing, said Lord Vaxter. But Chen thought she detected something uncertain in the being's voice. You are right, Chen agreed. My words here today change nothing, but your actions today will change everything. You think you are protecting yourselves by putting us behind a wall. But walls work both ways. You will not see what we become in our isolation. You will not know what we build, what we learn, what we create out of our anger and our need to survive. She touched her data tablet, activating the final protocol she had prepared in case this moment came. This is Ambassador Chen Wei transmitting final message to all human colonies and Earth itself. The verdict has been delivered. We have been banished. We have one cycle to get everyone home. Then she looked back at the lords. You wanted us gone, so we will go. But I promise you this. You will regret teaching us that we are on our own. You will regret showing us that the galaxy has no place for us. Because one day, we will show you what humanity becomes when you take away everything except our will to survive. Lord Vaxterian gestured, and Chen felt the platform beneath her feet begin to move, carrying her out of the chamber and away from the council, away from the galaxy that had rejected her species. And she did not look back as she walked down the corridor toward the human docking bay. Chen allowed herself one moment of weakness, one tear that slid down her cheek for the future that had just been stolen from billions of people. Then she wiped it away and straightened her shoulders. The lords thought they had seen human aggression, human violence, human stubbornness at its worst. But they had only seen humanity trying to fit into their society, trying to follow their rules. Trying to be accepted. Now, they would see what humanity looked like when it stopped trying to fit in and started trying to survive. The thought should have terrified her. But instead, Chen found herself smiling as she boarded the last human ship that would ever leave council space. Because the lords had made one critical mistake in their judgment, they had assumed that isolation would weaken humanity, that cutting them off from galactic resources and knowledge would cause them to wither and fade, that the barrier would be a cage that contained the human threat. But humanity had spent most of its existence isolated on one small blue planet, fighting and struggling and clawing its way up from the dirt to the stars. And isolation had never made them weaker, it only made them stronger. 50 standard cycles had passed since the barrier had been erected, and the Galactic Council had long since stopped thinking about the humans they had banished beyond it. The decision was recorded in the historical archives as a necessary measure, a difficult but correct choice that had preserved galactic stability. And the younger species who had joined the council since then barely knew that humans had ever existed at all. Lord Vaxterium, who had delivered the verdict all those cycles ago, now served as the chairman of the Outer Territories Development Commission, overseeing the expansion of civilized space into regions previously deemed resource-poor or dangerous for colonization. And it was in this capacity that the first troubling reports reached its attention. The automated survey probes sent to map the regions near the SEE exclusion barrier had stopped transmitting, which was not entirely unusual as equipment failed and cosmic phenomena interfered with signals all the time. But the pattern of failures was what caught the attention of the junior analysts who first noticed it. 3 probes had gone silent within the same cycle, all of them in different sectors, but all of them at roughly the same distance from the barrier. And when replacement probes were dispatched to investigate, They too cease transmission upon reaching the same coordinates. It is likely a natural phenomenon, explained Subdirector Krell. A Fenari whose fur rippled with colors indicating concern, but not alarm. Perhaps a previously undetected radiation field or gravitational anomaly. We should reroute future survey missions around the affected areas. Lord Vaxterium reviewed the data. Its form shifting through several states as it processed the information. These probe losses form a pattern. See how they create an arc that follows the curvature of the barrier itself. Natural phenomena rarely organize themselves so geometrically you think something is destroying them deliberately. Krell asked, his fur now showing patterns of disbelief. But there is nothing out there except empty space and the human quarantine zone. The word hung in the air between them. And Vaxterium felt something it had not experienced in many cycles. Unease. Send a scout ship, it ordered. Crude, not automated. Have them investigate the last known coordinates of the failed probes. But they are to maintain a safe distance from the barrier at all times. The exclusion protocol is still in effect. The scout ship Meridian Dawn departed 3 cycles later, crewed by a mixed-species team of scientists and military observers, who viewed the assignment as either a routine investigation or a punishment posting. Depending on their level of optimism, Captain Thelzorum, a veteran of the Fenari exploration fleet, fell somewhere in between. He respected the mission brief's emphasis on caution, privately thought the whole thing was likely a waste of resources and time. 50 years was a long time for humans to have been isolated, and he doubted they even had a functioning spacefaring civilization anymore. His opinion began to change when they reached the first probe's last known location and found nothing. Not debris, not radiation signatures, not even the faint trace elements that should have remained after a probe's power systems failed. It was as if the probe had simply vanished. Could it have drifted off course? Asked his science officer. A crystalline core who specialized in gravitational phenomena. Not this far, Thelzorum replied, and not all 3 probes in the same way. Something removed them, and they did not want us to know how or why. They proceeded to the second location with weapons charged and shields at maximum, which made several of the civilian scientists complain about wasted power. But Thelzorum had survived 40 cycles of exploration by listening to his instincts. And his instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. The second location was equally empty. But as they prepared to move toward the third site, the ship's long-range sensors detected something that should not have been possible. An energy signature moving in the space between them and the barrier classification? Thelzorum demanded unknown, his sensor operator replied, her Vaxian tendrils quivering with confusion. The signature does not match any known propulsion system. It is not antimatter, not quantum tunneling, not even fusion-based. If anything, it looks like controlled chemical explosions, but that would be impossibly primitive for interstellar travel distance and trajectory. Approximately 2 light hours away and holding position. It appeared shortly after we arrived, Captain. Think it was waiting for us. Thelzorum felt his fur stand on end. Can you get a visual? The view screen flickered, and then resolved into an image that made every being on the bridge fall silent. The ship that hung in space before them was like nothing they had ever seen, where council vessels were elegant and streamlined, shaped by advanced understanding of physics and aesthetics. This ship was brutal and geometric. It looked like someone had taken a massive rectangular container, added engines that glowed with angry orange fire, covered every surface with armor plating that had been scorched and dented and repaired over and over, and then studied the whole thing with weapons that appeared to be simple magnetic accelerators and chemical explosive launchers. It looks like something from the Savage Ages, whispered the core science officer. Like something our ancestors might have built before we understood real engineering. Magnify the hull markings, Thelzorum ordered. His voice tight, the image zoomed in on symbols painted on the ship's scarred armor, and Thelzorum felt his blood run cold as he recognized the language. Human Standard. The same writing system he had seen in historical archives from before the exclusion. The words read, UNCS Remembrance, they are hailing us, as the communications officer announced. Audio only, no visual. Put it through static, filled the bridge for a moment. Then a human voice spoke in perfect galactic standard. Council Vessel Meridian Dawn, you are operating in restricted space. State your purpose. Thelzorum exchanged glances with his officers. This is Captain Thelzorum of the Galactic Council Scout Service. We are conducting routine survey operations in unclaimed territory. We were not aware this space was restricted. A sound came through the speakers that it took Thelzorum a moment to identify. Human laughter, unclaimed? Captain, this entire region is under human jurisdiction. It has been for 30 cycles. Did the Council forget to update their maps? The exclusion protocol confines human activity to the space behind the barrier, Thelzorum said carefully. Your presence here violates the terms of that agreement. More laughter. We never agreed to anything. The Council locked us away and threw away the key. But they forgot something important. Locks can be picked, walls can be climbed. And prisons can be escaped. Are you claiming that humans have crossed the barrier? Thelzorum asked, though the evidence was floating right in front of him on the view screen. Crossed it, studied it, understood it, and then quietly expanded past it while you all went about your business. The human voice replied, We have been operating out here for 3 decades, Captain. And you are the first Council ship to even notice. Thelzorum's mind raced. The probes. You destroyed them. We collected them for study, the human corrected. Your automated systems are quite sophisticated. We learned a lot from them. We also learned that the Council is starting to pay attention to this region, which means our quiet expansion is about to become much louder. I need to report this to my superiors, Thelzorum said. Already signaling his communications officer to prepare a priority transmission. Go ahead, the human said. In fact, we encourage it. The Council needs to understand that things have changed. Humanity is not the frightened species you locked away 50 years ago. What happened to you out there? Thelzorum asked, unable to stop himself. What did you become? The human was silent for a long moment. We became what we needed to be. The Council gave us 2 choices. Wither away or adapt. So we adapted. We took every scrap of technology we had, every resource we could find, every lesson we had learned from our mistakes, and we built something new. The Council will not allow this expansion, Thelzorum warned. You are still bound by the exclusion protocol. The Council can try to enforce it, the human replied, and Thelzorum could hear the smile in their voice. But they should know that we are not asking for permission anymore. We spent 50 years alone, 50 years learning that we cannot trust anyone but ourselves. 50 years preparing for the day when we would step back out into the galaxy. This is a threat, Thelzorum said flatly. This is a statement of fact, the human corrected. We are here, we are not leaving, and we are done being invisible. Tell your lords that humanity remembers the banishment. Tell them we remember every vote that was cast against us, every species that turned their backs on us. Tell them that the barrier they built was not a cage. It was a chrysalis. The transmission ended abruptly, and Thelzorum stared at the alien ship on his view screen for several long moments before giving the order to retreat as the Meridian. Dawn turned away and began the long journey back to Council space. Thelzorum composed his report, trying to find the right words to explain what he had witnessed, trying to convey the certainty he felt that the galaxy was about to change in ways no one was prepared for. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session 3 cycles after Captain Thelzorum's report reached them, and the chamber that had once witnessed humanity's banishment now filled with voices demanding action, explanation, and in some cases, Panic Lord Vaxterium stood at the center of the chaos, its form flickering between states more rapidly than usual. A sign of distress that other lords recognized, but chose to ignore as they shouted their concerns and accusations. How could they have crossed the barrier? Demanded Lady Corsentiment, her crystalline form pulsing with angry reds and oranges. The exclusion protocol was supposed to be absolute. The technology was tested for centuries before implementation. Obviously, it was not tested against human ingenuity, replied Lord Thenshaw. A being of pure thought encased in a force field. We assumed they would accept their imprisonment. We did not consider they would try to escape. We should have destroyed them when we had the chance, snarled Ambassador Krell, who had risen in the Fenari hierarchy since the banishment. Isolation was always a half measure. A civilized solution to an uncivilized problem. The Council does not commit genocide, Vaxterium said sharply. its voice cutting through the noise. We made the choice we thought was right. We cannot change the past. We can only deal with the present. And the present requires us to determine our response to this human expansion. Send the fleet, Krell said immediately. They have violated the terms of their confinement. They have illegally occupied space outside their designated zone. We enforce the exclusion protocol with whatever force is necessary. Several lords voiced agreement, but others hesitated. We do not know what capabilities they have developed, said Lord Marental, an aquatic being whose tank rippled with concern. 50 cycles is a long time for a species as inventive as humans to have been left to their own devices. They fly in primitive ships powered by chemical reactions. Krell scoffed. Thelzerum's report was clear. They have regressed to ancient technology, probably because they lack the resources and knowledge to maintain advanced systems. This is a perfect opportunity to remind them why they were confined in the first place. I would like to examine their ship's design more carefully before we make assumptions, Marental insisted. But the mood of the council was already decided 3 cycles later. A peacekeeping fleet of 37 vessels departed for the disputed region near the barrier, equipped with sufficient firepower to neutralize any resistance and clear directives to push human forces back behind the exclusion boundary fleet commander Zeltorn, a decorated veteran of the border pacification campaigns, reviewed the intelligence brief on human capabilities and felt a mixture of pity and disgust. The images showed ships that looked cobbled together from scrap, weapons that belonged in museums, in tactical formations that seemed almost random. This will be over quickly, he told his staff. We will make visual contact, demand their withdrawal, and when they refuse, we will disable their vessels and tow them back across the barrier. Minimal casualties, maximum deterrent, affect his second officer, a young corps named Shen Nil. Studied the data with more concern, Commander. These energy signatures are unusual. The chemical propulsion they use generates enormous amounts of thrust. Far more than should be possible with such primitive technology, brute force compensating for lack of sophistication, Zeltorn dismissed. It makes their ships faster in straight lines, but less maneuverable. We have every advantage. The fleet emerged from Quantum Transit at the designated coordinates and immediately detected 7 human vessels in defensive formation around what appeared to be a mining operation on a large asteroid. Scan them, Zeltorn ordered. Weapon status, shield strength, crew complement. The results confused his sensor operators. Commander, they have no energy shields. Their hull armor appears to be simple metal alloys, and their weapons are reading as magnetic accelerators and chemical explosive delivery systems. No shields, Zeltorn repeated. How do they defend against directed energy weapons? They do not appear to have any defense against them. Sir Zeltorn felt a brief flash of uncertainty. This seemed too easy. But he pushed the feeling aside and opened a communication channel to the human ships. Attention human vessels, you are in violation of Galactic Council space law. Power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted back to your designated territory. The response came from the largest human ship, a blocky vessel that looked like it had been through several battles already. This is Captain Maria Santos of the United Nations colonial ship Defiance. We recognize no council authority in this region. We suggest you turn around and leave while you still can. The audacity of the response almost made Zeltorn laugh. You have 7 ships. We have 37. You have primitive weapons. We have quantum destabilizers and matter disruptors. Stand down or be disabled. Last chance, Commander, Santos replied. Leave now, Zeltorn. Cut the channel and turn to his weapons officer. Target the lead ship's engines. Disable them. Show them we are serious. The peacekeeping fleet's weapons charged. Elegant arrays of exotic technology that could tear apart molecules or collapse local spacetime. And they fired in perfect synchronization at the human flagship. The humans did something unexpected. They moved not. With the graceful maneuvering of council ships, but with violent bursts of thrust that threw them sideways with force that should have torn the vessels apart. And the council weapons passed through empty space where the human ships had been moments before. They are fast, Chenille observed. Much faster than the projections suggested. Compensate and fire again, Zeltorn ordered. But before his fleet could retarget, The human ships fired back. What emerged from their weapons were not energy beams or exotic particles, but simple pieces of metal, accelerated to a significant percentage of light speed, and chemical explosives that generated brief but intense fusion reactions. And they fired not in careful measured shots but in continuous salvos that filled space with projectiles. The first Council ship to be hit was the destroyer, Harmonious Future, which took 3 magnetic accelerator rounds through its quantum shield generators. The technology that protected it from energy weapons was useless against simple kinetic force. And the rounds punched through the elegant hull plating like it was paper. The ship lost power and began to tumble. And before rescue operations could begin, 2 more Council vessels reported critical damage from the human barrage. How are they penetrating our shields? Zaltorn demanded. The energy readings are minimal. They are not using energy weapons, Science Officer explained frantically. They are using physical projectiles. Our shields are designed to disperse energy, not stop solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. Zaltorn stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Recalibrate shields for kinetic defense. All ships engage evasive patterns, but Council ships were not built for evasive maneuvers. They were designed to move elegantly and efficiently through space, trusting in their shields and superior technology to protect them, and against human weapons that ignored energy defenses and filled space with dumb metal moving at incredible speeds. Those advantages meant nothing. The battle that Zaltorn had expected to last minutes stretched into an hour. Then too, and with each passing moment, more Council ships fell to the relentless human assault. The peacekeeping fleet's weapons were more powerful, more sophisticated, more impressive in every measurable way. But they could not hit targets that moved with such violent unpredictability, and they could not stop projectiles that their shields were never designed to handle fallback. Zaltorn finally ordered, "All ships retreat to Rally Point Gamma, Commander." "We still outnumber them," Chanel protested. "If we just adapt our tactics, look at the display," Zaltorn snapped. "We have lost 11 ships and damaged 13 more. They have lost none. We are not adapting fast enough, and they are killing us with technology. Our ancestors abandoned millennia ago because we thought we had evolved past it." The peacekeeping fleet withdrew in disorder, leaving behind wreckage and wounded pride. And as they limped back toward Council space, Zaltorn composed a report that he knew would shake the very foundations of the galactic order. The humans had not just survived their banishment. They had weaponized their isolation, stripped away all the sophisticated technology they had been learning from the Council, and returned to the brutal simplicity of their own engineering philosophy. If it works, build more of it. If it does not work, make it bigger. And if the enemy has better technology, hit them with something too simple for their defenses to understand. 17 minutes. That was how long the first engagement with post-banishment humanity had lasted. 17 minutes for the galaxy to learn that all their advanced technology and ancient wisdom meant nothing against opponents who fought with the refined savagery of a species that had clawed its way up from a single planet with nothing but determination and violence. The surviving ships of his fleet dragged themselves home. Zaltorn looked at the damage reports and casualty lists and understood with terrible clarity that the Council had made a catastrophic mistake 50 cycles ago. The war spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass, and the Galactic Council discovered that fighting humans was unlike any conflict they had experienced in their millennia of civilized governance. Within the first cycle, 12 more Council fleets engaged human forces, and 12 more fleets retreated with catastrophic losses. The pattern was always the same. Council commanders arrived expecting to overwhelm primitive opponents with superior numbers and technology, and instead found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to play by any recognized rules of engagement. Ships did not engage in the elegant dance of fleet combat that Council tacticians had studied and perfected. Instead, they appeared from unexpected vectors, struck with overwhelming violence, and vanished before Council forces could mount an effective response. They did not hold territory because they did not need to. They simply made it too expensive for the Council to operate in any region they chose to contest Lord. Vaxterium stood in the war room, watching real-time updates from a dozen fronts, and felt the weight of its long existence pressing down. The maps showed human forces moving with apparent randomness. But after studying their movements for weeks, Vaxterium had begun to see the pattern. They are not trying to conquer us, it said to the assembled military leaders. They are conducting a systematic campaign of retribution. Admiral Krell, who had been promoted from ambassador to military command in recognition of his hardline stance on human containment, studied the maps with narrowed eyes. Explain, look at the targets. Vaxterium gestured to the holographic display. They are not attacking population centers or economic hubs. They are striking military installations, supply depots, and the home territories of species whose representatives voted for the exclusion protocol. They are keeping a list, Lady Chrysanthemum said quietly, her crystalline form showing colors of deep concern. They remember every species that voted to banish them, and they are making us pay for it. This is why we should have destroyed them, Krell snarled. Mercy toward primitives only encourages this kind of barbarism. Calling them primitives while they are defeating our finest fleets seems counterproductive, observed Lord Marental. Perhaps we should reconsider our assumptions about human capabilities before Krell could respond. An aide rushed into the chamber with a priority alert. My lords, we are receiving reports from the Tanari home system. Human forces have entered the system and are broadcasting a message on all frequencies. The Tanari voted for the exclusion, Vaxterium said, checking the historical records. Their representative was particularly vocal about the human threat. What is the message? The aide activated the transmission, and a human voice filled the war room. Young and female and utterly calm, people of Tanara. This is Commander Rachel Zhang of the United Nations Colonial Forces. Your government voted to exile humanity 50 cycles ago to lock us away and forget we existed. We have not forgotten. The tactical display showed 3 human ships in high orbit above the Tenar homeworld. A planet of 18 billion souls who had enjoyed peace for generations under Council protection. We could destroy your world, Zhang continued. Our weapons are crude but effective, and your orbital defenses were designed to stop sophisticated attacks. Not simple kinetic bombardment, but we are not here to commit genocide. We are not here to become the monsters you accused us of being. Vaxed. Sterium felt a spark of hope. Perhaps they can be reasoned with instead, Zhang said. And her voice took on a harder edge. We are here to give you a choice. You have 6 standard hours to evacuate your orbital military platforms and surrender control of your defense grid. If you comply, we will accept your surrender and move on. If you resist, we will demonstrate exactly what happens when you underestimate humanity. 6 hours, Krell spat. They cannot be serious. The Tanari defense fleet is one of the strongest in this sector, but the Tanari government, seeing the wreckage of a dozen other fleets that had tested human resolve, chose to comply. Within 4 hours, their military platforms were abandoned and their defense grid was shut down. And the human ships departed without firing a single shot. The message was clear. Humanity was capable of terrible violence, but chose to exercise restraint. They could have killed billions, but instead they demonstrated that they held the moral high ground, despite everything the Council had done to them. This is worse than if they had attacked. Vaxterium realized. They are showing the galaxy that we were wrong about them, that they are not mindless savages, but disciplined soldiers with a legitimate grievance. Over the following weeks, the pattern repeated across Council space. Human forces would arrive at a world whose government had supported the banishment. They would demand surrender, and when it was given, they would leave without causing civilian casualties. But when resistance was offered, they responded with brutal efficiency that left no doubt about their capacity for destruction. Council's member species began to fracture. Some worlds surrendered immediately when human ships appeared in their systems. Others fought and paid the price. And a growing number began to question whether the exclusion protocol had ever been justified in the first place. We need to negotiate, Adental argued during one particularly contentious session. We cannot win this militarily, not without resorting to weapons of mass destruction that would make us the villains of our own story. Negotiate what? Krell demanded. They have already violated the exclusion. They have already attacked Council worlds. What is there to negotiate? An end to this war, Marental replied. Recognition of human sovereignty in the regions they now control. Reparations for the injustice of the banishment. Whatever it takes to stop the killing, That would be admitting we were wrong, Krell said. It would undermine the entire authority of the Council. The authority of the Council is already undermined. Every time a human fleet defeats our forces, every time they show mercy when they could show cruelty, every time they prove that we misjudged them, our authority diminishes. Marintel is right. We need to find a way to end this before we lose everything, but ending the war proved impossible because humanity was not interested in negotiation. They were interested in justice. And justice required that every species that had voted for the banishment understood the cost of that decision. The turning point came when human forces arrived at Vaxillion Prime, the homeworld of Lord Vaxterium species, and one of the founding members of the Galactic Council. The human fleet that appeared in orbit was the largest yet assembled. Over 200 ships that surrounded the planet like a steel noose. And the message they broadcast was directed at Vaxterium. "Personally, Lord Vaxterium," said a human voice that Vaxterium recognized from ancient records. "This is Admiral Chen Wei. You may remember my grandmother, Ambassador Chen Wei, who stood before the Council 50 cycles ago and pleaded for humanity to be given a chance. You denied that plea. You delivered the verdict that condemned my people to isolation. And now I am here to deliver our response." Vaxterium felt something it had not experienced in millennia: fear. "What do you want?" It transmitted back. "I want you to understand," Chen replied. "I want you to look at these ships and know that each one was built with materials we scavenged from asteroids. I want you to know that the people crewing them grew up in colonies that had no contact with the galaxy, that learned to survive on nothing but human determination. I want you to know what you created when you locked us away. We thought we were protecting the galaxy," Vaxterium said. "We thought you could throw away an entire species and face no consequences," Chen interrupted. "You thought you could condemn billions of people for the crimes of a few, and no one would hold you accountable. You were wrong." Vaxterium looked at the ships surrounding its homeworld and made a decision that would change the course of the war. "What would it take for you to stop this?" It asked. What would humanity accept as justice? There was a long pause, and when Chen spoke again, her voice was thoughtful. "Surrender," she said simply. "Not of your world, not of your people, but of the idea that the Council has the right to decide which species deserve to exist in the galaxy and which do not. Surrender the exclusion protocol. Surrender the assumption that you are superior to us. Surrender your pride and admit that you were wrong, and if we do this, then we talk," Chen said. "We sit down like civilized beings, and we work out a new arrangement. One where humanity is not a tolerated guest, but an equal partner. One where no species can be banished simply because they make others uncomfortable." Vaxterium looked around at the other lords gathered in the war room. Seeing in their alien faces the same exhaustion and resignation it felt, "I will bring your proposal to the Council," it said finally. "You have 1 cycle," Chen replied. "After that, we start reminding you that mercy is a choice, not a weakness, and we are choosing to offer it now because we want to prove we are better than you thought we were. But that choice can be withdrawn." The transmission ended, and Vaxterium knew that the Age of the Lords was over. Humanity had not just won a war. They had won the argument. They had proved through. The summit was held not in the Grand Council chambers, where humanity had been judged and banished, but on a neutral station that humans had constructed specifically for this purpose. The station itself was a statement built with the same brutal efficiency as their warships, but designed for peace rather than war. Functional rather than beautiful. Strong rather than elegant. Lord Vaxterium arrived with a delegation representing every species in the Council, and as they boarded the human station, they could not help but notice the details that spoke of humanity's journey over the past. 50 cycles the corridors were lined with images from Earth and the human colonies, pictures of families and farms and cities, reminders that behind the warships and weapons were people who had built lives in isolation. The walls bore names too, thousands upon thousands of them, and when Vaxterium asked about their significance, the human escort explained quietly that they were the dead. People who had perished in the harsh early years of the banishment when resources were scarce and survival was uncertain, We want you to see the cost of your decision, the escort said. Not with anger, but with a terrible, calm certainty. We want you to understand that this was never abstract policy. These were lives. And they ended because you were afraid of us. The conference chamber was circular, with seating arranged so that no position was elevated above any other. A deliberate rejection of the council's hierarchical traditions. And at the center of the room stood Admiral Chenwei, older now than her grandmother had been when she faced the lords. But with the same determined eyes. "Thank you for coming," Chen said as the delegations took their seats. "I know this must be difficult for many of you. Admitting error is never easy. Especially for civilizations that have governed for millennia. We are here because you defeated us," Krell said bluntly. The Fenari admiral looking diminished without his fleet to command. "Let us not pretend this is anything other than the victor dictating terms to the vanquished. If that was all this was, we would be dictating terms from orbit over your homeworlds," Chen replied. "Instead, we are sitting here as equals, talking about the future. That distinction matters. So what are your demands?" asked Lady Corseniman. Her crystalline form showing colors of resignation, Chun activated a holographic display at the center of the table. "This is the new accord, a framework for a truly representative galactic community. It has 3 core principles that are non-negotiable. The first principle appeared in every known language. No species shall have authority to unilaterally determine another's fate. The Council will no longer make decisions that affect entire species without those species having representation and voice." Chen explained, "The days of a few lords deciding what is best for everyone are over." Vaxterium examined the text. "This would fundamentally alter the power structure of the galaxy." "Yes," Chen agreed. "That is the point. The old structure allowed you to banish us. The new structure ensures that can never happen again to anyone." The second principle appeared. "All conflicts shall be resolved through transparent mediation before force is considered." "You fought a war," Krell pointed out. "How can you demand peaceful resolution after demonstrating such capacity for violence?" "We fought a war because you gave us no choice," Chen said. "You did not mediate. You did not negotiate. You simply locked us away. If this framework had existed 50 cycles ago, none of this would have been necessary. That is exactly why we are insisting on it now." The third principle materialized. "All species have the right to develop and exist according to their own nature, provided they do not infringe upon the same rights of others. This is the most important one," Chen said softly. "You banished us because we made you uncomfortable, because our approach to problems did not match your civilized standards. But our way is not wrong, simply because it is different. Diversity is not something to be managed and contained. It is something to be celebrated and protected." Marental's aquatic form rippled with what might have been approval. "These principles are remarkably balanced. I expected demands for reparations, for territorial concessions, for punishment of those who voted for the exclusion. We considered all of those," Chen admitted, "but we realized that revenge is not the same as justice. We do not want to become the thing you feared we were. We want to prove that you were wrong about us. And the best way to do that is to build something better than what existed before, but there must be consequences." Vaxterium said. "We cannot simply pretend the past did not happen," Chen nodded. "The consequences are already here. The galaxy has seen that the Council was wrong, that humanity is not the threat you claimed, that your judgment was flawed, your authority is already diminished. Trying to punish you further would only create new grievances and perpetuate the cycle." She gestured to the holographic display. "The new accord includes provisions for a transitional period. Existing agreements and treaties remain in force unless both parties wish to renegotiate. Council worlds retain their autonomy and sovereignty. But new institutions are created with representatives from all species, including those who were previously marginalized or ignored." "What about human territorial claims?" asked a representative from a minor species whose worlds bordered the former exclusion zone. "You have occupied systems beyond the barrier. Will you keep them?" "We have built colonies and infrastructure in those systems over 50 cycles," Chen replied. "They are ours by right of development and habitation. But we are willing to discuss joint development of disputed regions and to establish clear borders through negotiation rather than force." The discussion continued for hours as delegates raised concerns, and Chen addressed them with a combination of firmness and flexibility that surprised many in the room. She was not the unreasonable primitive they had expected, but a skilled diplomat who understood politics as well as war as. The sun set on the station's artificial day cycle. Vaxterium requested a private conversation with Chen, and they stood together looking out at the stars through a viewport, the ancient lord and the young admiral. Representatives of two very different philosophies of civilization, I voted to banish your people, Vaxterium said quietly. I believed we were doing the right thing. That we were protecting the galaxy from chaos, I know, Chen replied. I have watched the historical records many times. I have heard you deliver the verdict to my grandmother. Do you hate me for it? Chen considered the question carefully. I did once, when I was younger and angrier. But hate is exhausting, and we have spent too much energy surviving to waste any on grudges. What I feel now is something closer to pity. You and the other lords had built something remarkable, Chen said. A galactic civilization that lasted for millennia. That brought peace and prosperity to thousands of worlds. But you became so comfortable in your success that you forgot how you achieved it. You forgot that progress requires struggle, that diversity includes perspectives that challenge you, that safety achieved by excluding those who make you uncomfortable is not really safety at all. Vaxterium's form rippled. We told ourselves we were protecting civilization. You were protecting comfort, Chen corrected gently. There is a difference, and in protecting your comfort, you created the very threat you feared because you forced us to become strong enough to survive without you. And when we came back, we were no longer asking for acceptance. We were demanding recognition. What happens now? Vaxterium asked, if we sign this accord, if we accept these changes. Chen smiled. Then we build something new together. Something that includes human ingenuity and council wisdom. Something that makes room for both our brutal practicality and your sophisticated philosophy. We learn from each other instead of fearing each other, and if we refuse, then we continue to exist separately, Chen said. We will keep the territories we have claimed. We will build our own civilization. And eventually the galaxy will have to choose which model they prefer. But I hope it does not come to that, because despite everything, I believe we are stronger together than apart 3 cycles later. The new accord was ratified by a vote of the assembled species, not unanimously. There were those who refused to accept humanity's terms and chose to maintain their distance. But the majority recognized that the galaxy had changed and that clinging to the old ways would only lead to irrelevance. The formal signing ceremony took place on Earth, which had been closed to alien visitors for 50 cycles. And as the delegates descended to the blue planet that had birthed humanity, they saw cities that blended human architecture with repurposed alien technology. Farms that fed billions using techniques developed in isolation. And monuments to the dead who had not survived the banishment tat, the ceremony, held in the restored United Nations headquarters. Representatives from across the galaxy added their marks to the accord, and when it was done, Chen stood before the assembly and spoke words that would be remembered for generations. Today we turn the page on a dark chapter in galactic history, she said. Today we choose cooperation over fear, diversity over conformity, and justice over